Hello everybody! Welcome to GameGuru live broadcast. It's the last Wednesday of every month and today's the day. So, usual format for our monthly broadcast, which of course is I got some stuff to show you, progress that's happened over the last 30 days, and then we'll go straight into a big Q&A where you can ask any questions you like, and if you want something in the software demonstrating, that could be a kind of question, please post it in the live chat and we'll go through them chronologically, and we have the software GameGuru Max up and running and we can do a demonstration if it's practicable. And that's it. So get writing your questions, put a question mark in. Usually people who ask questions like really towards the end of the hour, and these broadcasts are usually coming in at about an hour's length. Question asked in the 55th minute usually don't get an answer because I'm saying goodbye. So get your question in early and it will definitely get answered. We usually get through 90% of the questions that are posed. But if you don't have any questions, you just want to find out what's going on, that's what this is about. And I've got a little list of things just to remind myself what's been happening over the last 30 days. I'm not going to be meticulous about every single item. Suffice to say, we are still putting bug fixes as the highest priority. But along the way, certain bug fixes lend themselves to an opportunity to increase functionality slightly. Functionality that not only benefits everyone who's using Max right now, but sometimes artists who, with a small functional addition, can go on, create lots of assets and perhaps turn it into a DLC for the future, which gives you more capabilities, not just pretty things to look at, but functional things that actually do work. And the biggest of those functional additions that, yes, will lead to probably multiple DLCs, and there may already have been a teaser out there, it's the new custom hands system. And it's all in the title, but let me demonstrate and we'll go from there. Before I do that, I just want to click a few off-screen buttons that you can't see, just to make sure that I am being listened to. My sound levels from my stats look good. Hopefully everyone else can hear me. No one's really complaining that there's silence. So I'm going to take that as read that everything is hunky-dory. I've dialed up the speed at which it's transmitting images, so you shouldn't get as much stutter. I've lowered the volume of all the other music and sound effects tracks and increased the volume of the microphone pickup and moved the microphone closer in an attempt to solve some issues that were reported last month and the month before about quietly and loud everything else. So hopefully we've resolved that one too. So I can see everything seems to be goody good. So we're going to go and check out, I think this one is where I'm going to go out and get the first bit, which is the custom hands system. And we've made it really, really easy. Less so for artists who want to create new hands, but we have documented that. This is for everybody else. So if we click on the player start marker and go to customize, you'll notice that we've rearranged the layout a little bit. It was always a bit of a faff to actually, every time you click on player start marker, to always have to scroll down to get access to weapon selection. So we've moved that to the top, as it's typically the first thing you want to change in the player start marker. And look what's right underneath it. Underneath the weapons drop down, you've now got hands drop down, and when you select that, you've now got a full set of stock hands. The one, probably two that you're most familiar with is Combat Gloves Light and Mail Light. Those are the two that we usually bounce around for the last couple of years, in fact. And there's always been this request that, you know, you're getting weapons from different artists and the hands and the arms are included in those weapons. So if you have a lot of weapons from different artists and you're playing your game, the player's hands keep changing and it breaks that suspension of belief for your game. With the new weapon system, and now with the custom hands weapon, we've separated the arms and the hands from the weapons. So any artist who uses the new system has the ability to map hands and arms to the weapon they're creating. It also makes it a little bit easier as well, because the artist doesn't have to worry about modelling and animating hands. They can just focus on the weapon. And we're not quite finished with the new weapon system yet. The projectile aspects, you know, the bang bang shoot shoot, and the rockets and things of that ilk, that's still to be done. Work's being done right now to get that one finished and rounded off. but it's all part of this new system to sort of give you maximum customizability. So I'm just going to run it as is. I think Male Light is the one I had in this level, so I'm just going to show you that with the sledgehammer that was pre-selected in the player start marker, like so. Typically, a month ago, this would be the legacy combat gloved hand, but now you can see it's actually using a different set of hands. If I go to, say, Combat Dark, it's the combat gloves, but now with dark skin. We can go female, so we'll say female dark. We'll run that, and you've got female dark, and you've got female light. So you've got the, and these are just stock. These are the ones that you're going to start you off with out of the box. But as we release DLCs or add more to the stock art, more hand selections will make themselves apparent. And anyone in the community who wants to create some different textures for these hands and contribute them to the community, very, very happy to add them to the official build as well. So if that's something you're interested in, go for it. So let's show them in action. So this is the one you're usually familiar with, Combat Gloves Light. And that's what you'd normally see. So if you could say, for example, I pick up the AK, there literally is no difference. It looks exactly the same as it did before, except now that hand is quite separate in the engine to the gun. And to prove that, if I went to say Male Dark and then went and collected the same AK, different set of hands. And I've already seen some other hands, they're still work in progress, from an artist who's having a lot of fun with the custom hand system. And the leather, so the character's wearing like a leather, and you get all the PBR texturing of that leather and the colour and light play on it. Looks absolutely awesome. So that's a really big thing. That's something that people have been asking for literally ever. For 9 years ago when GameGuru Classic first came out, and it was quickly apparent that the arms and hands kept changing as you switched weapons. But in the very near future, that will be a thing of the past, and hopefully that wasn't too loud. That you can do the usual things. So you've got your flick knife. So you get, yeah. So you get the idea. So that's in the latest EXP build. So if you want to check that out, just go and get the latest EXP build from Steam. You'll see this new drop-down hands in the player start marker, and then you can play around with it. It's also pretty clever too. There's a folder called GameGuru Hands, and inside there is a series of folders. Each folder contains one custom hand type, and it only has 4 files in it. If you add your own folder in there, emulating those files, then rerun GameGuru Max, that additional entry will show up immediately in the hands drop down. It's an auto scan, so you can actually start adding your own hands right now. You don't have to wait around for DLCs. You can just create a new folder, drop the necessary files in, and away you go. So that's custom hands. Really pleased about that, and let me know what you think, and if you think we've missed something obvious. But I think we're all right so far. And for those artists who are interested in doing extra hands, don't worry about animations. The rig's done, and the animations are already applied for that rig. The only thing you'll have to worry about is if you've already done a lot of weapons, say for GameGuru Classic, and now you want to use the new weapon system, the new custom hand system, there's a little bit of work ahead. It's not too onerous, and we'll provide help through the guides as you need it. But I think it'd be super powerful for you to be able to update your weapons so everyone gets to change the underlying hands that are holding those weapons. So now what I want to show you is, I think it's in this one. Is it in this one? Yes, it is in this one, Lee. Okay, test 1, 2, 3. This isn't my level. This was submitted to me just to demonstrate why the water control script doesn't work. Well, it does work now, but in fixing that, we also needed some additional tiny little functionality, which is the water. For the longest time, you've specified water height in meters, and you'll have noticed that it was 73 meters and the water is underneath the ground plane. That's because water height meters of 0 is like way under the earth, and you have to get it like almost to 100, well, I think it's something like 76, just to get it above the sort of the not biome flat water plane. But it's all very confusing. Most people just wanted to say, I want to set the water height to the Y coordinate where I do all my other objects? Well, we've now added that when you're in the advanced mode. So if you select the advanced settings, you'll notice water height changes to units. So now you're minus 72. So it's a pretty no-brainer to say, okay, a Y of 0 would be right there, right on the floor plane. We'll get rid of the wave size, so it's super, super flat. As you can see, you get a lot of Z clashing now because the polygons for that grey grid floor and the polygons for the water are exactly on the same Y coordinate of 0. And thanks to this, anyone who wants to create some water scripts with very precise water control, you've now got like a common denominator value. So this is now just a Y coordinate. And because of that, in fact, what shall I do? Shall I go, yeah, minus 10, 20, there you go. It's just slightly underneath the floor. So if I run this, this was the demo level that was sent to me kindly to prove that when you, see how it's sinking, I think it's 75 units down, and I added this little switch, which brings the water level back up to a certain value. There is actually a new version of the water control. Ooh, I'm now going to drown. Yeah, there's a updated water control script that's imminent to drop, and that should make it a little bit easier to use the water control script that you'll find in the where would you find it? I think you'd find it in the markers tab. Let me have a quick look for you. Water control, yeah, it's markers, and then at the bottom, water control by Necrim. So if you want to have a play around with making the water go up and down, a great little gameplay mechanic, feel free to check that out. But now I'd say now it works. It's not as confusing. Another bug that was reported, and wow, what a mysterious one this was. It's called the crouch drop. So imagine you've got a building and you're on the roof of the building and you jump off it. So I'll just demonstrate that crazy act. So I'm on the edge of the building, I jump off. Ouch. 500 health, 275 left, so it hurt. What happened was, if you went into a duck position, so that stood up and that's duck, crouch, and then you kind of walked off the building, you would go accelerate super, super fast. But now, it's the same speed of fall. When you was crouching and you jumped off that building, you would rocket down like 5,000 miles an hour, and it was a bit mad. So now it's a little fix, and the reason it was worth putting as a high to get it fixed is obviously someone who's working on this, actually it's quite a large level and they want to make sure that they can finish it. But also on a gameplay mechanic, you might have like, if I just rerun it sort of at the top of the building, you could actually like a conduit. If you ever remember the game, sorry, not the game, the Fifth Element, where you came out the side of the building into that tiny conduit and you went to the crouch all the way to the edge, and then you wanted to sort of jump out of that conduit. If you had the crouch held down, it would just break your game, but now it works perfectly fine. And another bug, well, it was a kind of a bug, but you could work around it, was Nav Mesh and Water. So I'll show you this level that I've created. New one. Now this, just to describe the scene for you, we've got nice big lake, little puddle here, I've got a crate, player start marker and a character over there. And the bug was the character would just run straight towards me, straight into the water, drown. Very stupid. But now we've made the character less stupid thanks to the Nav Mesh detecting the water table, that is where the water is, and only putting the Nav Mesh. Now he can see me now, but watch, if I hide, he's not going to try and run through the water, it's actually obeying the Nav Mesh in order to go around the water body and then do what he does. So it's a little thing, but it was so important. And also in the process, if you've got large amounts of water in your level, you've got a much smaller Nav Mesh, so it's slightly faster as well. But essentially right now, characters can't swim and characters can't breathe underwater. And now they actually know that and avoid certain death. In the future, I do see a need for special character abilities to jump in the water and swim across to the other side. And also characters that have the ability to breathe underwater, whether it's scuba gear or some breathing apparatus or a monster with gills, whatever it happens to be. You may not want the character to avoid deep water, in which case that Nav Mesh option to cut out all the water will be toggleable. But there's no point doing that, as none of the sort of bipedal characters can breathe underwater right now. So that's that. What I want to do as well, if it will let me, will it let me? I'm going to give it a go. Alright, watch this. Close that one down. Run my Steam. The reason I'm not running Steam right away is if you're smart, you can actually find me on Steam and start doing like chats, and it pops up in the live broadcast. And in the past, yeah, I had my Steam on and we get all kinds of random messages. Still haven't figured out a way to switch off those notifications. I just wanted to let you know why I had to come out and go back in for this new tab, which is called Workshop. Now, you probably already discovered this in a previous EXP build, but we've expanded it now to provide a lot more information. So in addition to the title of the workshop item, now a lot of these have been auto-subscribed because they're what's called a trusted item, and you kind of always want the latest version of these. It's a no-brainer to just have the software grab them for you and the latest versions. But as you subscribe to other workshop items, they will also appear in the list. And this will show you how many files are in that workshop item bundle. And finally, the date that workshop item was updated. And the reason these additional items were added in is there's a little bit of, whilst we are still testing it, concern that you have to go into Steam and do verify files to get the latest versions of the workshop items. And that shouldn't be necessary. And so we've bolstered this with more description of all the items you've subscribed and the dates of them, but also update workshop items has improved. So now you actually see a proper progress bar and what's actually happening and a status update of that update process. And we'll keep working on this. It's early days yet for the workshop, but we'll keep working on it until it's just super, it just works out the box, it's super friendly, it does everything you need to do, and none of the things that you don't want it to do. And then down the road, when it's super robust, then maybe we open it up so anyone can create and submit workshop items. Right now it's only, it's sort of like in a testing phase, so it's only available to a few contributors right now. So that's something else that I wanted to show, because it's literally hot off the press. This did not exist 12 hours ago, and this is already now in the EXP build. And the final thing that I can't demonstrate, but super important, is somebody sent me I think it was something like 20 gigabytes of project, and it loaded in, and then it came out, and then you rerun another level, and it crashed. Really frustrating, because the level was gorgeous and massive. And so that crash has been fixed. It was due to collection item list corruption. And now, not only has it been fixed, but some more code has been added to make sure it won't crash in a similar way in different areas of the software. And I was able to not only load up the story and the levels and run them, but also do the save standalone, and then play the standalone, which was 9.2 gigabytes in size. And in scanning that project, I noticed at least 3 gigabytes of that 9 was really massive texture files. I mean, huge things. 63 megabytes for like one texture, and not necessary. We try when we put out DLCs to make sure the textures are optimized and using the DDS compression, so the faster load and the small on the disk. But sometimes if you're getting it from third parties, and here, there and everywhere, just check out the textures, see if there's any way you can say reduce them in size or use DDS compression, because they'll just load in super quick, and it all adds up those textures. I think textures are the thing that really will kill your memory usage, and to some degree the final size of your standalone. It's something that we will definitely be looking at when we get more hardcore in terms of optimization and performance tuning, because it's always usually down to how much you're trying to do in terms of memory size and media and polygon count, things like that. So if we can add a few extra tools into GameGuru Max that let you, at a glance, analyze your media makeup for any particular level or a project as a whole, I think that would be super useful. Anyway, going off on one now, these are ideas for the future. As I said, bug fixing remains top priority. gone through all 12 pages of the current GameGuru Max issues reported thus far. Managed to get rid about of 20 that were actually feature requests in disguise as a bug, and a couple that were actually misclassified as Max when they were actually classic GameGuru Classic bugs. And there are some from 2021, that's 2-year-old issues, which I am pretty sure has been fixed. But right now we've still got a good bunch of highs that are going through, and once all them are gone, then we'll probably go through all 12 pages and see if there's any really old ones that we can quickly dismiss as totally fixed. And perhaps even the people who reported the issue is no longer around, and we're going to have to close it anyway. So without further ado, let's move on to the second part of our broadcast, which of course is your turn for the Q&A. So let's see if we can press the right button and get our chat up. Okay, so you can see the big black rectangle on the right. Well, that's my latest challenge, but I am getting quicker at clicking this one, clicking that one, and then clicking that one. I'm actually looking at the, there's a specification of exactly how it picks up the window, and there's a lot of extra details. Right at the end, V equals, and then something like 12, 15 characters. I think there's a way I can edit that, so it doesn't need that unique V equals whatever value. I think it may be able to pick up the chat window each month without me having to do a manual intervention, as you've just seen. So obviously we've got the chat window, but there's a little bit of a gap, so I'm going to have a play, see if we can fill that bottom part, and like so. I know, professional, right? I don't know. That should do. We can see the top and we can see the bottom. That's great. So I'm going to go to the top in order to make sure that we can answer our questions chronologically. And where appropriate, I'll be very happy to create a project or go in existing level and drop in some things and demonstrate. And it looks like there's a lot of question marks right at the top. And I'm going to read it out. Lee, I'm making a game with multiple levels, several kilometers in length with both enemies and puzzles. Can we please get checkpoints working again? Not ideal to die after several millions of miles. Yeah, checkpoints. There is actually 2 or 3 issues presently that I'll talk about the checkpoints, and I think there's a few more that want checkpoints expanded to do more. But yeah, I think if there's just out and out bugs, the idea of a checkpoint, for those who don't know, is you're running along. You don't really want to start all the way back at the beginning, so if you run through a checkpoint, it remembers that location. You'll still die later in the game, but when you do die, it just takes you back to the last checkpoint that you ran through. Makes it a lot easier to explore more of the level, and you're not doing a lot of grocery shopping in your game logic. But it sounds like there's a bug, so thank J Birdmax for that, and we shall get it fixed for this time next month. And I'll slap my wrist if I don't get it done. And please drop me an email. Best way really to make sure that I don't forget what I've pledged during these broadcasts, because the first question is probably going to get forgotten when I read out the last question. What's broke? Question mark. So I'll let Extreme Strategy and Jade Birdmax talk through all of that. Question from KC Productions. How to change the flashlight? Cone. 2 gave secondary circles inside, just like other horror games. Is there a slider or way to change its type? There's no way to change the flashlight. It's a pretty standard cone of light, and it's locked to the camera. What we're going to do next, the very next thing, the cone is pretty clever. It's all dynamic lights, but it's fixed to that camera nose. When we actually move it so it's attached to a HUD, like a torch you can wave around, or attach it to a weapon, you know, like one of the attachments of a laser weapon or something like that, then the shadows that cast from that light cone will look a lot better when using flashlight. But right now it's about the most boring basic type of flashlight you have. The only thing you have control over is deactivating the flashlight so your game levels don't have a flashlight. So that's the only thing you can really change right now. Okay, question from Extreme Strategy. How do I import weapons from GameGuru Classic to Max? With difficulty. GameGuru Classic weapons are not forward compatible with GameGuru Max weapons. We had to redo quite a lot of the weapon stuff for GameGuru Max. So the only GameGuru weapons for Max are the GameGuru Max weapons, which of course are the stock ones, the ones you'll find in the DLC, and anything that's currently shared in the GameGuru Max community. But getting the really old weapons from Classic into Max, you're going to have to know quite a bit about how to create a weapon. And once you have that kind of knowledge, you're probably going to make your own weapons anyway. It's not impossible, but we're going to kind of just look to supporting the new weapon system because of the aforementioned extra capabilities that we have with the new weapon system. So you'll see that evolve more than us trying to forward port all of the old GameGuru Classic weapons, some of which probably look dated by now. Another question, this is from Duke229. When will multiplayer finally be added? No plans to add multiplayer in GameGuru Max. If you were waiting for multiplayer before you take GameGuru Max seriously, I would say check back once we've announced all the bugs have been fixed and all of or a good chunk of the feature requests that currently exist on the issues board are also done. It's actually quite a big job just to finish single player without worrying about multiplayer. And the speed at which multiplayer has grown over the last 20 years, it's a whole different ball game doing a decent multiplayer games maker. So don't hold your breath if you're waiting for multiplayer mode in GameGuru Max. It may be easier to go to GameGuru Classic and play with that multiplayer. It does work, it just doesn't work at the moment, but there's a present bug where if you've got like custom media in your multiplayer maps, GameGuru Classic throws a bit of a wobbly. But if you're just using stock media in GameGuru Classic, multiplayer works. So at least that's one way you can have a bit of fun with multiplayer. But we're far, far, far away from even thinking about multiplayer for GameGuru Max. So we got to the bottom of that chat. I can scroll down a little bit, hopefully not lose my place. I did it right for once, brilliant. Yay, I can have girl arms. That's right, Loretta. But let me know if you want painted fingernails. We kept it really simple, just sort of generic as we possibly can. But I absolutely know a lot more hand options are already bubbling through people's minds. And you know what, it might be an easy way to sort of do a really good tutorial on how to customize the textures. So you don't have to kind of wait on an artist. You can just go in, update a texture, create a new folder for your own particular set of game hands, and away you go. It's a relatively quick process actually. We've kept it super simple. Is there, oh, so this is a question without the question mark. Axel B. Is there any realistic weapons like Tarkov? The stock weapons you find in Max Collection weapons, that's Max Collections folder, and then inside there's a folder called weapons. Go inside the things like the AK and the AR, those are pretty closely mapped onto existing kinds of guns. We're very aware not to do them exactly identical because of trademarks and copyrights and all the rest of it. But the ones that are in the Max Collection weapons are pretty close to things you'd find in the real world. But it's really down to third-party artists now in order to provide new weapons. Whether those weapons are completely fantasy or whether they're super accurate, that's really up to the artist. But we've just sort of put enough in to get you started. But there's no plans to do a Tarkov. I don't know what a Tarkov is. I certainly am not aware of any Tarkov plans. Okay, another question a little further down from Morebot Gaming. Is it possible to make adjustments to camera sensitivity and other camera type settings? Camera sensitivity, I assume you mean the first person player control system where you're running and using the mouse look to move left and right and up and down. Yes, you can change those, but you're going to have to go into a script called, I think it's called Game Player Control in the script bank. So go check that out, start looking for camera commands, and you'll see how we soften and create sort of inertias for the X and the Y mouse loop deltas, and you can play with those until you get something that's like the sweet spot for you. There isn't anything like through the UI we can go in and then dial up and down different values, but we're generally aware that the current player control system is a basic one and it doesn't really match say, the play control system of a really modern, like the latest Far Cry, because there's a lot of nuances to that, a lot of nuances, and I think when we do that like second iteration and we kind of recreate a really good example of a play control system, at that point it will be a really smart move to expose all of those different delta settings so you can tweak them so your game feels a little different than somebody else's game. But right now it's a pretty basic one, and if you want to change it you kind of have to learn a bit of Lua scripting. Okay, question lot here from Duke229. Too bad there is nobody left making weapons. That's not true. I already know one artist who is absolutely on fire for making weapons, so watch this space, it will be awesome. And Fearless Wee, question from Fearless Wee, will be able to change the hands in-game via Lua. So for example, the player puts on a new set of armor and their hands change to display this. Good idea. And of course, isn't that exactly what you'd want to see? RPG especially. So you start with some hands, and then maybe you pick up some gauntlets, and then gold gauntlets, and then, jewels inset into the gauntlet to show different levels of magic capabilities. And the list goes on. Right now, there is no such thing. But please create an issue on the issues board, not only mentioning the ability to change hands via script, but let's see how far down the rabbit hole we can go with this idea. If we're already changing the hands, what else could we change whilst we're about it? If we're in that general area and it's really easy to say, I can just add some sort of tertiary object layer, and then you can specify something that gets attached to the hands of the gloves. You know, whilst we're in that general area of code, it might be like a 20-30 minute job to make so much more cool things happen. But obviously from the beginning it will kind of only be for scripters. So hopefully those scripts will become behaviors that are then common, and then DLCs pick them up and you get all that cool features in the future. But no, right now there isn't a command to change the hands in real time. You kind of have to change it in the player start marker. But you can change the hands from level to level. I will say that. So let's say you get to the end of level 1, and in level 2 you get to wear the gauntlets that you will have to have had before you leave level 1, if you get what I mean. Okay, 229 also asks, when will this hands update, please? It's already in the current EXP build, so just go onto Steam, select beta, select the experimental branch, let it update, launch GameGuru Max, drop down a start marker, go into its properties, and you'll see the hands, and then you can start playing it right away. And the auto scan for the GameCore hands folder is already in place, so you can cut and paste one of those existing hands, change the textures, you've got your own hands. Happy days! Okay, here's a question from Nightfall X. Hey, did I request in GitHub something about the player can switch operations in your game, so like a virtual novel or multiple endings for your game? Can switch operations in your game, so like virtual blah 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 blah. Yeah, right now the storyboard allows you to create non-linear game levels. So you can have level 1, level 2, level 3, or level 1 straight to level 3, and then back to level 2, and then back to level 1. So you can actually already create that kind of logic to switch the sort of general direction of your game and come up with different kinds of endings. So that's already in there as a capability, but yeah, it's not sort of a obvious thing, and maybe we need to put out a few tutorials on how to create simple versions of that. Looks amazing, thank you very much, Nomad Soul. We try our best, and everybody loves Necrim. Okay, yeah, and Nav Mesh is looking better. I think you're right. Here's a question from Jaybird Max. Is there a way to scale up NPCs like fish and monsters? I was able to scale up one of the female mercenaries until she was 10 times larger than normal, and that kind of worked. It was a bit mad, but it worked. Not trying to scale up fish, so I did promise that this is a live demonstration rather than me waffling on. So I think this was the level with the water in it, wasn't it? So let's see what happens if we try it. I'm going to get rid of the soldier so it doesn't keep shooting me. I'm going to look for a fish. You know, I'm slowly growing library. Sea bass is usually quite large. So let's see what happens. We've put in a little fishy. So that's its default size, fish size. Anyone who doesn't know, we've got F1, which toggles between two different kinds of object manipulation. This is the default one, which is like a smart system. It will just try and find the floor. But as fish will need to float, I'm going to use the widget, which gives us a bit more control. We'll get him out into the pond a little bit. And now we're going to make him 3 times larger. So we've got scale multiplier, 100% to 300%. Nice big fishy fish. And we'll get him down a bit in case he's floating. Hopefully we should be able to see big fishy fish when we run this game. Has he? Yeah. Fishy fish has gone small again. Oh, little fishy fish. Oh well. Yeah, so I'd say that was a bug, wouldn't you? I'd want my fish to be big. Yeah? So the monster fish. Yeah, that's a bug. That should happen. I totally want that in my future games. Massive fish. So please, if that's not already posted as a bug on the issues board, please report it and then email me of its existence. I think it's a 5-minute fix, that one. But yeah, you totally want to be able to do that. Okay, question marks, looking for... Mickey asks, what type of game you're going to start building? If that's a question directed at me, I've not given it too much thought. It's probably going to be something along the lines of like a murder mystery or some kind of multiple endings story with a lot of clever character interactions and puzzles and things of that nature. But I've put it out my mind and off my plate until we're almost at like single digits critical bugs. Once the bugs are like a handful of extant reports on GameGuru Max, then we can all rub our hands and start getting excited about feature requests and maybe my game project and its progress as well. But too early to talk about that whilst we have 280 or so bugs outstanding. Okay, who's Haley? I don't know. I don't know yet. Okay, Duke229, when will you revive the GameGuru Classic multiplayer? It already exists in GameGuru Classic. It just has a bug which doesn't allow you to use custom media in GameGuru Classic. But it currently exists now and it works with stock media. So go check that out, let me know if I'm mistaken, and none of it works. Another question, will there be a GameGuru Classic improvements? Not in as far as dropping development on GameGuru Max and going back to work on features for GameGuru Classic, although if you've been tuning in on the Classic news front, 4 times a year, 1 per quarter, we look at the bug list and get it down to single digits, or in a couple of quarters now, got it to 0 bug count. So we continue to develop GameGuru Classic in order to make sure that all the bugs are fixed all the time. And so that's our mission, to make sure that GameGuru Classic is that stable. It's an older game maker, but it's a stable older game maker that allows you to make your games without too many nasty surprises. There isn't really a big impetus to start adding lots of new features to Classic. So I think it's fair to say, don't expect lots of new features to GameGuru Classic coming from the internal TGC development team. It may absolutely come from third-party community contribution, and that's already happened. If you look through the changelog, a lot of the recent updates for functionality additions have come from very generous contributors in the Classic community, but they won't come from the internal development team. Hopefully that's pretty clear. And I think it's the right move. Let's put all our eggs, future shiny eggs, into GameGuru Max, because I think that is the best chance of producing some really nice games down the road. Question underneath that is from Nomad Soul. Anything you can share about Max roadmap beyond DirectX 12 and latest Wicked Engine update? I can't share anything beyond DirectX 12 and the latest Wicked Engine because those aren't implemented. I could probably share some hints as to what's going to happen running up to DirectX 12 and the latest Wicked Engine, which of course is a good chunk of those feature requests that you currently see on the GitHub issues board. The things that really ought to be in, the kind of like okay, they're not a bug, but really that functionality would just do so much. Those things we will probably prioritize over swapping out the underlying technology and going from DX11 to DX12 and the old Wicked engine we currently use to the shiniest, latest new Wicked engine, because that was attempted. We tried over a couple of months to do that, but it's a lot of work and it's fraught with challenges, let's say. So really, absolutely no plans beyond that DirectX 12 Wicked engine upgrade. So we're just thinking about, when that will happen. It will probably happen when we run out of quick optimization and performance improvements, and then that next step is swapping out the underlying technology to get that big boost that you can only really get by swapping out big chunks of the underlying technology, which of course is what DX12 and the latest Wicked engine represent. So yeah, again, probably don't hold your breath on the DX12 conversation until we've whapped through quite a lot of the issues board. Questions, question marks is what I'm looking for, and I found one from 3Com. Imagine 110 objects joined together forming a single model. GameGuru Max would say that there are 110 materials, when in reality there's only 110 objects sharing a single material. Will this change? It may say there's 110 materials in the material viewer, in the properties of, say, a smart object, and here I am just guessing. So I'm not going to guess, I'm going to have a go. So this crate, how big is it? Okay, so we're not going to do 110, but we'll do 5, right? So those are 5 objects. We'll group them together and we'll make a lovely smart object. Smart 5 we'll call it. And smart 5 is S. So where are you? Smart 5. There you go. So there's our smart object. So when we select it, we don't have materials. So that I guess was wrong. So where you're finding 5 different materials, I'm not sure. So they're all connected together. They are actually 5 separate objects. The smart object system simply creates a group hierarchy for them, so you can actually manipulate them as if it was a single object. But you can see there's no materials listed here. The only thing I can do is ungroup them, and then you click on an individual one, and then you've just got that single material. The way you look at materials within an object is this here, this little drop down. And I suppose the question could mean, if you're creating your own object and gluing 100 meshes together, those meshes rather than the materials are the ones that show up here. It's a bit misleading to suggest these might be materials. They're not. These are the individual meshes of the object, and then you can change the materials of each one of those meshes. But you could have 50 meshes in here and assign all 50 meshes the same albedo and the same normal, and it would only be stored once in the video memory. It won't store 50 identical versions of that. The only way the engine can be tricked into storing 50 identical copies of a texture is if you rename that texture to 50 different texture names. It doesn't analyze the image itself, it analyzes the path and the texture file name, and if those match, it'll just use an instance of something that's already loaded. If they don't match and it thinks they're different, it will load in another copy of that texture. That's a couple of answers, and it's probably not hit the answer that you was fishing for, but super useful information for people who didn't know that. But if you want to clarify, please do, although I have checked the clock. We're 45 minutes in, so I think there's another 10 minutes of good question and answers time, and then that last 5 minutes, well, that's no man's land. So good luck if you unfortunately have your question falling in on the last 5 minutes. Okay, Duke229, I think Mickey's asking another question about my game. I don't have a game to talk about today. I'll demonstrate today. And Lee asking for multiplayer is like asking Gable Newell for Half-Life 3. Pretty much, yes. Great analogy. Okay, this is a new question from someone who's not asked a question before today, before this chat started. Will there be an option for a female point of view, including hand reload animations for female protagonist? Yeah, I've just demonstrated it. So if you go onto Play Start Marker and customize and hands, sorry, pick a weapon of something, hands, you got female dark hands and you got female light hands. So that's when you run your game now, and I'm holding an assault rifle. I am now a female protagonist holding an AK-47. Boom. If that's not enough, let me know and clarify and add to the question. I'll be happy to answer some more. Okay, looking for another question. Question marks. Just very quick then, I can find more questions. How much time we have to expect for a proper prefab system? We're basically sticking with the smart object system. That's what we're calling our prefab system. There are no plans to do another prefab system over and above this. If you do want a very specific kind of prefab system, something that the smart object system doesn't cater for, create an issue on the GitHub issues board and go into some details, do some illustrations, really paint a picture of why an updated prefab system would be super useful for lots and lots of GameGuru Max users. But I'm pretty happy with the smart object system. It does quite a lot of what you'd want a prefab system to do. Okay, no question. There's a question mark from OND Software. Or D&D. Off-topic question related to AGK. There you go. First AGK question of the night. I hope you don't mind answering. Is there any future plans for AppGameKit Studio, or is it strictly bug fixing mode now? Mostly bug fixing mode. We are increasing the community contribution aspect, increasing the documentation, making it a little bit easier to get through the code, and we're always leaving that door open for the community to contribute to AppGameKit. And every now and again, we may add functional additions to AppGameKit, but in the main, what you get currently in AppGameKit Studio is pretty much it. We're going to make sure that it's super solid before we're finished, and we're opening that door so anyone else can expand it in the future. But don't hold your breath for like 50 new features for AppGameKit Studio, because it won't arrive anytime soon, at least not from the internal development team. So I think that's a pretty honest answer, and it prevents you from waiting needlessly year after year for what happens next in AppGameKit Studio land. I've lost my place. AGK question through Lee. Right, no more question marks until Bob from Sorry Games. How do I turn off the water ripples when walking in water? Can you turn off water ripples by walking in water? Let me just check the player settings. I don't think you can. Player speed, swimming speed, health, heartbeat, screen blood, damage indicator, flashlight. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to screenshot that. This is where it will appear. Effects, it'll be on by default, water ripple effect, and you can untick it here. I am probably going to forget that, and I forget it's even in my clipboard. Please create an issue for that request, then drop me an email linking to that issue. It's a 5-minute fix, it's a 3-minute fix, and I'll be happy to do that for you, no problem. Okay, looking for another question, and I'm going to say we're right near the bottom of the live chat now, but then my screen just jumped, so I can't authorise that observation. Me stesso, and what about proper way and workflow to import animated weapons or weapons in current bare hands? We have a weapons guide. If you go into help, there's this thing called guides folder. Select that, you'll see a folder called weapons. Go into there, there's a guide. Open that guide, it's a PDF, and it describes how to create your own weapons and have those weapons fully compatible in GameGuru Max. So go check that out, and if you've got any further questions, shoot them directly to me. I will provide answers and then make sure those are in a future version of the guide so everybody else benefits. Okay, any chance of DOF? For anyone who's not in the know, that's depth of field, and present Wicked Engine fully supports depth of field effects. I know some people say, Lee, it's absolutely crazy that you've not switched it on. It's like 2 lines of code. I'll tell you what then. Yes, it is 2 lines of code, but I challenge anyone out there to go and grab the latest version of GameGuru Max source code repository. It is available. Just make sure that using the April 23 branch. And I dare someone to come into this, the post-processing drop-down, add another tick box, which has depth of, or even better, a slider for depth of field, and then maybe a tick box for on and off, and find that Wicked Engine command and tie it into that gadget, and then submit it as a pull request. It'll go into the official software. That's my slam down. That's my challenge for the month. I dare anyone to add that feature, because it is a pretty cool feature, seeing depth of field in games. There is a performance hit, but it still looks pretty cool. Okay, question marks. Another one. And please, can you add a way to access the models folder in GameGuru Explorer directly from Macs? Models folder. We don't have a models folder. We have an object folder, which is available just by clicking the add button, which I think is a much nicer way to browse for objects. You know, you just have to click on something and then go into preview. Then you can see a nice big version of it. This is much better than using Windows Explorer. But if you did want to just see the files, just open Windows Explorer. So yeah, I imagine me, Stesso, is going to turn into a big list of feature requests. We have a GitHub. Just go into GitHub and tap at GameGuru. Yeah, just tap at GameGuru and you'll see an issue tab. And click on that tab, you'll see all of the current feature requests that are queued up. Feel free to post as many ideas as you want. They're all good ideas, and eventually we'll prioritize them and get them implemented. Okay, we are getting to the bottom of the chat list. This is great. We're at 52 minutes in. Looks like we're going to finish under the hour, which is always desirable. Who wants to watch a 3-hour YouTube video? 3com, I was talking about the 100 material limit. The limit. Message I get when I try to import my compound model. Does this change your answer? Yeah, the 100 material limit stays, and I'll tell you why. It's not good practice to develop the whole of your level in an art package and then just import it in and drop one object into the level and that's your level, because it's hugely inefficient in terms of the engine being able to cull what it's rendering, the physics shapes and the physics properties, other kinds of properties, material properties when you shoot wood or metal or concrete. That's why we want you to assemble your level out of lots of separate objects, different objects in close proximity to each other. That way all of those extra settings I just mentioned can be preserved and allows the engine to be very quick and performant when it renders it. Every time I've seen someone create like a massive level with 250 materials and 290 meshes as one object that's dropped into the level, it never performs well. It kind of works with, of course, the 100 material max limit you've already mentioned, but it's never a good way of creating GameGuru max levels. It probably works great in other game engines, just doesn't work particularly well with the way GameGuru Max wants you to create a level. So if you're talking about large assemblages that are kind of like rooms and corridors and whole spacecraft that need 100 materials, probably assemble it in the level in smaller parts. Outside of that, if you're genuinely talking about one relatively small object that needs 100 separate textures, multiplied by the need for an albedo, a normal, and a surface texture. So that's 300 texture files in memory to render the visual for one object. It seems wasteful to me. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe there's a scenario that completely makes sense to cram so many textures into one single object. But as I said, if it's trying to do like the whole level or a large area of your level in a single model, GameGuru Max really doesn't like to work that way. So that's why I'm saying the 100 material max stays, because it prevents that kind of scenario happening too often. But absolutely feel free to email me separately, make your case, because I'm not dismissing any ideas at this stage, but I'm just telling you the rationale by capping the material count to 100. And another question from Bob, can one implement it easily, at Sabernescence. Sabernescence can answer that one, thank you very much. Oh, and he has. 3com, so how can I destroy my buildings in small chunks? I know, right? Destructible physics, what a cool area of study. Something that I totally wanted to do, just ran out of time, forget version 1 out the door. I do see a couple of options. One, we already have a building editor, for those who don't know what I'm talking about. I can go out to here, click on here, and then select Building Editor. It's a separate app, but it integrates quite well with GameGuru Max, and it lets you build very simply You got a window and a door, and you can create multiple levels, and you get the idea. You can make a building. The building editor, because we're constructing it from scratch, we have the ability to infuse some knowledge about how the building could be destroyed. It makes no sense to allow you to destroy literally everything, because ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a game we're talking about. You can't literally just destroy absolutely everything, because the game story wouldn't make any sense having destroyed everything down to dust. But there are plenty of opportunities where you say, I want to be able to blow up this wall and get through to a secret room or something like that. So you could probably use the building editor to create some little markers to say, you know, this is destructible, and here's the fracture pattern or something like that. Then save that information out with this building. Then you drop that building into GameGuru, and then when you press test level, boom, you've got a destructible piece of building. I think that's probably a good way to go. But as to the select an object, go into properties and say you are completely destructible and this is your fracture pattern, I also think that's a good idea, but it's probably quite reckless. But just for the sheer fun of it, I'd like to implement something like that. And there are algorithms that can take a 3D model and successfully shatter it in 3 dimensions and separate those out as separate objects, and then you've got your nice effect. But it's quite a deep subject, and it's going to come after all the bug fixes. But yeah, it's a pretty exciting area, and I'm looking forward to having to play with that when no one's looking. Okay, we're 57 minutes in, so I'm going to pick one more. Who gets the last question? DOF question mark. That's another question. I need more than one word. And it looks like we got to the... Oh, no. Where's one? Doesn't put a question mark in, but this comes in as the last question. Can I use the booster animation with my imported model as well as the character creator models? Certainly with the character creator models, because they are the same rig. In fact, they were designed for all the character creator models and the characters that come with GameGuru Max. So they just work out the box. As to your own imported model, they would have to use the rig. We've provided, if you go into the guides folder and look into characters, inside there's a Blender rig. If you base your imported model on that Blender rig and then save it out and import it into GameGuru Max, then apply the boosters animation files to that, it will work. That's kind of how you do it. But you can't just take an arbitrary model with a completely different bone structure and then expect the animation booster pack to work. It just wouldn't understand how to map the animation instructions to the rig. So it's a good general rule for everyone who's interested in this kind of thing. The animation data goes hand in hand with the correct rig for that animation. They kind of come as a pair. So I think that's it. I think we started almost 1 minute in, and we're 59 minutes in now. So I think by the time I've said goodbye, we'll be at 59 minutes and some seconds for YouTube. So YouTube will be happy. And anyone who watches this outside of the live chat will be able to watch it at their leisure without watching 5 hours of it. So I hope you enjoyed this broadcast. We'll be back next month, the last Wednesday of September. I think we'll be ready to show you some more stuff, some more cool functionality and some more bug fixes. So until next month, the last Wednesday, 7 PM BST in September, thank you very much for your kind attention, and I'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.